Yes, people, what's going on? Welcome back to United View. And there is big breaking news this afternoon. No time for all of the pleasantries. Of course, welcome back to Ben. He's come through to give us the very latest on Jadon Sancho and, of course, Bruno Fernandez. But Ben, the breaking news this last sort of hour is that Jadon Sancho will return to Man United. It looked like he was going to stay at Chelsea. It looked like there was going to maybe adjust those wage demands, but they couldn't find an agreement. And he's on his way back to Manchester United. What's the latest, mate?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. The Chelsea made an attempt to keep Sancho. That was their initial preference. But the one key caveat is Sancho had to fit into Chelsea's incentive-driven wage structure and essentially take quite a big wage cut because he was very well paid at Manchester United. The parties couldn't reach an agreement. Sancho is believed to have other options, and therefore Chelsea have decided to pay this 5 million penalty clause and send him back to Old Trafford. And really, you can call it a penalty clause and you can say that's still money for Manchester United, but it was negotiated in a period of urgency where a solution needed to be found. And I think Chelsea feel that number is basically a loan fee because they never paid one in the first place. Or, as it's been described to me, you can look at it as Sir Jim Ratcliffe said, Manchester United are contributing to Sancho's wage. So you'd assume, first of all, Chelsea would take their portion of what they paid during this loan and say that's the starting point. But there is a Manchester United portion on top still being paid by the club. And if you times that 125,000 or so, which is roughly what I believe Manchester United were paying by the 6 months of the loan, add that together and a little bit more to factor in there was no loan fee, that's what Manchester United are getting back. So it almost becomes a straight loan and it suits Chelsea. And now Manchester United will have to try and find a solution for Sancho. And you would presume, because he's done quite well at Chelsea, scoring in the UEFA Europa Conference League final and well liked at Chelsea too, that maybe Manchester United will take that 25 million maximum end of the obligation and feel they can get a little bit more. But the challenge is exactly the same one that Chelsea have just faced. If Sancho doesn't drop his wage, it's still going to be quite difficult to find a solution for him, unless, for example, he fancies a move to Saudi Arabia where there is interest.
Is it as simple as that Sancho basically refused to drop his wages? That's why they arrived there. Chelsea did actually want to keep him. This isn't based off of lack of performance or not lighting it up enough. This is purely numbers, and that he didn't want to drop his wage demands to suit Chelsea, because I just couldn't see that happen. I was like, he's not going to get that money anywhere else. He's Man United don't want to keep him, so surely the smart thing to do would be to stay in London, close to your family. You liked down there, and just drop your wage demands. But is that what you're hearing, that he didn't want to drop his wage demands?
I don't think that Sancho was necessarily greedy, but we're not just talking about a drop. We're talking about a significant reduction, because if you look through Chelsea's top 10 earners, and I wouldn't expect Chelsea to feel that Sancho would be in the top 3 or 5, it's probably in the region of £150,000 a week. And his Manchester United wage, if reports and reliable salary websites that give us a kind of baseliner to be believed, is almost £200,000 a week more than that. So the difficulty in Manchester United finding a solution for Sancho is the fact that maybe they overpaid him to begin with. And obviously that was the same with Chelsea when they signed Raheem Sterling. Sterling goes on loan to Arsenal. He'll be back at Chelsea. He's on a big wage. Ben Chilwell, loaned to Crystal Palace, on a big wage. There's a pattern here. And when you see the pattern so widespread, it's perhaps unfair to say to the individual player, if you got a high wage one day, you should just naturally want to play football and drop so significantly that you're only earning 33% of what you were previously getting. Because a lot of these players at the time they got that money were working in an inflated market, were in demand, and were well compensated as a result. But now, of course, they're hard to get rid of, or in Chelsea's case, they're hard to sign. My impression from sources at Chelsea is they were very genuine in wanting to keep Sancho. It was their preference, but it was about him dropping the wage within their structure and not ending up, because somebody like Sterling's going to go. Other players like Caicedo and Palmer have got these incremental increases over time. So their wages going up and up and up. And I think the last thing that Chelsea would want is a player like Sancho basically being their top earner overnight, maybe quite significantly once Raheem Sterling is out the door, and then find that he's not necessarily starting week in, week out, because it's going to be very competitive on that left-hand side. People forget as well that not only do Chelsea want another left winger who's right-footed, because the Mikhailo Mudryk situation is unclear. And even if he's able to clear his name, the process is going to take time. And of course, if he's not, it's likely to start as a 4-year ban. So there was always scope to add one more left winger. And now with Sancho going back to Manchester United, and he won't be at the Club World Cup, I'm told as well, they can add another one too. And then Giovanni Quenda's going to be joining in 2026. And he's utilised in Chelsea's mind as a left winger, not a wing back. So if you also add the fact that Pedro Neto can play quite comfortably on both sides, Chelsea in signing Sancho would have had more of a long-term decision as to whether this was their starting number one left winger. Because imagine if one of their three targets comes in, Garnacho, Gittins, or Nico Williams, if it proves cost effective. Sancho's there, Mudryk could come back, Pedro Neto might have to go to the left side because Esteval William might end up playing on the right because Cole Palmer will keep his.
It's a lot of problems.
Noni Madueke might be starting on the right, so Pedro Neto might move to the left, and then suddenly Quenda arrives as well. So the last thing I think Chelsea wanted was a player on that kind of wage. And in the end, talks were amicable. They couldn't reach an agreement, and now he's going back to Manchester United.
So Bruno Fernandez, Ben, we spoke about this, and you said that there was this deadline that was going to happen on Friday. Bruno was only taken till Tuesday to make his mind up. What happened, and how did he come to stay at United?
Yeah, I think Bruno Fernandez knew he had until the end of this week to decide. And naturally, having gone away with Manchester United whilst his agent was meeting Al Hilal, there was then time over the weekend for Fernandez to speak to his family. And as I've said over the last few days, this decision wasn't only financial and football, it was also about family. And to an extent, if we take club football out of it, the World Cup, because remember, Hilal approached Bruno Fernandez also in 2024, and he said he didn't want to go to Saudi until after the 2026 World Cup. So that may well have been a factor as well. But really, I'm told it came down to advanced talks and quite productive ones, leading to Bruno Fernandez giving this offer very serious consideration on the project side and on the financial side. But then he spoke to his family. There were also some talks between Fernandez's agent and Manchester United. And there's a lot of faith, I think, from the Manchester United captain that this club and project can be turned around. And Manchester United fans can rest easy despite the PSR position that even without a Bruno Fernandes sale to the tune of 100 million euros or more, they can go out there in the market and make some quick signings. So Mateus Cunha's already joined. That will be dated, I'm told, July the 1st. It's 3 installments. First installment's 20.8. So you're putting that on the financial year 2025, 2026. And by then, we don't even know whether PSR will still exist. With Brian and Bruno, it's a case of being able to sign him, even with Bruno Fernandes still at the club as well. So I expect Manchester United to do exactly what they did with Andre Onana and Mason Mount, which is spend 100 million. I know for book purposes, it won't be 100 million on any financial year, but go out there and get 2 signings in, fit in the region of 100 million, maybe a little bit more if they're to succeed with Mbeumo, then worry about the outgoings after that and feel confident that Alejandro Garnacho is expected to leave. That's pure profit on the books. You've got a possibility of Rasmus Højlund, but the challenge there is that can actually present a book loss. So maybe they have to find a loan with an option or an obligation to structure it in a way where overall they can bring him more money, or they can try and raise his value somewhere else, bring him back, and then sell him. You've still got Rashford and Barcelona. 40 million remains the asking price there. The same for Aston Villa. And we wait and see with Jadon Sancho, of course, because the expectation is still that Manchester United would like to find a solution there. Maybe not as clear cut as Rashford, because you feel that the relationship broke down between Amorim and Rashford. And obviously, if we're looking at the case of Garnacho, he was pretty much told to his face, go and find another club. Bit more time has passed now with Sancho. So if they can't get the club to pay that wage, and minimum, you would think, because it's Chelsea's obligation, 25 million, do they leave it a little bit longer and assess him in pre-season? We'll have to wait and see. But I think there's a very realistic chance Sancho goes as well. So Manchester United can still find money. Bruno Fernandez was your sort of quick financial fix, but you're losing your captain. All of these other players are slower sales. If they all come off, you generate a similar amount of money to if you just sold Bruno Fernandez in the first place. And I think Manchester United realised with the window long and them being able to structure deals to amortise them and maybe not even start the first instalments until the next financial year, they will be able to move swiftly in the market, spend that roughly 100 million, maybe a little bit more, and Bruno plus Cunha, if they of course get Bruno, and on top of that, still the number 9, because we know that the Bruno sort of pitch is very much about, like Cunha, you could both be 10s, or Bruno could be second striker, and similarly, Cunha could go wide left and Bruno could go wide right. But I don't think either of them are seen as number 9, but it's 9 cover. So if you need their goals output or you need to push them into a more advanced position, they're both capable of it. But otherwise, you've got players that fit very neatly into Ruben Amorim's system in the 4 kind of attack-minded players that will be the sort of focals and have the responsibility of having those goal contributions to ease the burden on whoever the more traditional number 9 is. And we know that even with Xerxes and Højlund at the club, they still want to find someone too. So I think Manchester United will back themselves to find the players they need and then sort the outgoings out, rather than one in, one out, because it's a long summer. And the fact that Bruno Fernandez is staying is definitely good news to Ruben Amorim, because he'd said publicly and privately to Bruno Fernandez that it was his preference. But the deal with Al Hilal got really close. And even though in hindsight, we may hear a bit of rewriting, because when a player stays, they maybe always like to spin, never wanted to leave, never discussed that much. But the photos give it away of his agent in Riyadh. And Al Hilal were very confident. There was a very definitive time zone on it because of the Club World Cup. But it is a final answer, as Al Hilal asked for, of no. And now both Hilal and Manchester United can move on. And I think even if they'll still feel delighted that they've got Bruno Fernandez, who, as long as he's at the football club, you still feel will stay as a starter.
Absolutely. Ben, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know you're a super busy man. There's news breaking all over the place today. So thank you so much for dropping by to give us the very latest. I'm sure you're going to be on so many other things today and so much other content going on your side. So thank you once again, Ben. And I'm sure across this transfer window, we'll be seeing each other very, very soon. Ben Jacobs there with the very, very latest. And we'll see you soon, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.
Nice one.